Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of our 6th comicartlives.com. I know this is the art drop right now is happening. We've got over 700 people on the site right now. I'm sure actively sending out purchase inquiries. So it's going to be a good day. I'm incredibly impressed. I have to say that we crossed the $6,000 artworks, or 6,000 pieces of art available for sale during the show. This is it's a record. I mean, in the last show, I think we just went over 5,000. This one we're over 6,000. So that's very, very impressive. Over 300 exhibitors this time around. Many people who are only exhibiting on Sunday after they saw how well yesterday went. So I can't thank everybody enough for their support. And with that out of the way, I want to introduce my first panel of the day. And my good friend John Suntress is going to be moderating it. And we've got artist Marc Lamming, who is going to be his guest today, all the way from the UK. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi.
Thanks, Bill.
It's
always
my
good
pleasure.
To see you. I'm glad it's going so well this weekend, as always. It's a fun show, and thank you for letting me be part of it.
Hey, you're welcome on the channel anytime, John. I appreciate it. You've helped me since day one of doing these, and I couldn't do these shows without your help.
It means a lot, man. And I'm so glad Marc could join us, especially we were talking off the air that Thought Bubble is going on this weekend. And Marc's joining us from the UK. What are you in London, Marc? What part specifically are you in?
I'm like 20 minutes north of London.
What's the town called?
Hatfield, which is leafy suburbia.
Attaboy. That's great. Did you go to Thought Bubble at all this weekend?
No, I made after New York this year, I made a decision that I'd kind of done enough shows for the year. And, I wanted a break, I think.
We can all relate to that. Absolutely, man. I believe me. I always need, I don't know about you guys, but literally I could use like 2 or 3 days of nothing post physical con where it's like, all right, I'm home. Let me literally, it's bad. I'm like Howard Hughes. I got the Kleenex boxes on my feet. It's like, don't bother me, man. Keep the blinds drawn. It's not good.
Absolutely. I was late on a job when I got back. So it was straight from the airport to the studio and working. So the thought of doing another show was just like, that was just too much to think about.
I don't blame you.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to run off to finish some programming. I've got a 12 o'clock panel to host. But again, Marc, very nice meeting you. And John, I'll see you again later this afternoon.
That sounds great, Bill. Thanks a lot for your help. Absolutely.
You're welcome.
So, Marc, this is a great opportunity, man. I mean, we've talked before, but if you don't mind, we get into a little origin story about Marc Lamming and your fine work and stuff. Were you classically trained?
Or,
well,
I did the art school thing, but I think by the time I'd gone to art school, the whole sort of real classical training thing was down the toilet by then. You got lots of conceptual artists, and I went the graphic design and illustration route. So we did a year of everything. So you're doing printmaking and all that kind of stuff. But British art school's really strange in that they don't really teach you anything. You're there to use the time. You get set projects, but the idea is that you drive the work.
So they didn't really guide you as far as style,
no,
or anything, or composition, or
I mean, I used to get told that my style was too old-fashioned and I'd never get work. I mean, a lot of my work looked like 1950s romance covers at the time. And I was thinking, that's exactly what I want to do. There's plenty of women's magazines that were using that kind of stuff at the time. And so I never saw it as an insult. And they thought they were being very clever.
I understand. And what were you reading as a kid? I mean, I'm assuming you were a comic kid, straight away.
I was that kid that read everything from the cereal box to, the TV listings. And, if it wasn't nailed down, I was reading it. So, which, as somebody who's dyslexic, you see, I could read to myself. I couldn't read out loud. Reading out loud would cause me all sorts of problems. So my teachers and my parents thought he's just, making it up when he's reading, or pretending to read. And there I was getting through tons and tons of books. But comics in the UK at the time, there were maybe 100 to 250 individual weekly titles out at the time. So you had a choice from everything from sort of nursery school up to teenage books. The typical adventure and war stuff. Obviously not. You had the American reprints for the superheroes, but we never really did superheroes. We did secret agents and boys that had really good football boots that were magic and things like that, or goats that were aliens.
I've heard Alan Moore talk about the blind ballerina.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's lots of because I used to read my sister's comics as well, so I read as many girls' comics as I could at the same time. So there's lots of suffering girls in horrible private schools where they were locked in basements and being tortured by the upper sixth. Very strange stuff.
But I'm a Mach 1 fan.
Yeah.
Which for Americans that might be listening or watching, kind of that was the British takeoff of the $6 Million Man, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I hear you about the secret agent stuff. God, Chris Samnee years ago did an amazing Dan Dare, and I've got it. I bought it from him, and I've only read the later revivals of Dan that have happened in the last 20 years or so. But I certainly appreciate the design and aesthetic of Dan Dare.
Yeah, my dad was an original Eagle reader. He got that from issue 1. So everything was compared to Dan Dare, which is almost unfair to any other artwork because there was a full team of people working on that. He had model makers, he had like Alex Ross does with his staff of models in terms of people that he'll use for photographing stuff. And he basically had an old bakery which he had filled like you would do a manga studio. So you had people airbrushing backgrounds. He would draw the layouts, and somebody else would turn that into pencils, and he might do the eventual inks. And that's a guy called Frank Hampson.
Okay. Were there artists that preceded you that you looked to in terms of inspiration and emulating their styles?
Oh, loads of the 2000 AD artists. So you got people like Gary Leach, who did the original run on Miracle Man, Brian Bolland, Mike McMahon, good old Uncle Dave Gibbons.
Oh yeah.
Dave lives down the road, so I'm allowed to call him that.
Uncle Dave, that's awesome, man. I think he'd punch me if I called him Uncle Dave. That's great.
But all of those guys from 2000 AD were really inspiring. But even earlier, people like Frank Bellamy, who did the Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet stuff, and things like UFO and the he didn't do the Barnet Woman. Who did that? That was same guy did John Burns, who did Modesty Blaze as well.
Wow, that's great. Big Modesty Blaze fan. Funny you mentioned the Jerry Anderson TV shows, and also the fact that you kind of said that you were reading everything from cereals to cereal boxes to the TV listings, and the British TV Guide would have comics in it. And I saw that Jerry's son is republishing a lot of the Fireball X.
Well, Anderson had their own comic called TV21, and it was tabloid sized, absolutely beautiful artwork. Even the black and white stuff had washes on it, and that then span out to Lady Penelope as a comic, which was just as popular. These are just a bit before my time. It's the sort of thing that you get off older friends' brothers,
I do know, absolutely. Well, like you said about reading your sister's girl comics, I had female cousins, and it was Betty and Veronica mostly. That was their thing, and also surprisingly Mad Magazine, which was really great to get exposed to Mad at a young age. Oh, Lyle wants to know, did you like Bruce Cornwell's Space Captain Jim Stallworth?
don't know that. I'm drawing a blank, but that could just be age.
So breaking in, what were your first jobs? Did you do your own comics
Um,
before you broke in? I mean, yeah, how
I
did it work?
was always making little comic book, from about the age of 10, I suppose, drawing my own Spider-Man book or my own Star Wars book or whatever it was that was inspiring me. But it wasn't until I was at art college, and basically I was that weird on that weird thing of like we had an illustration group and we had a graphic design group, and I was smack in the middle. I was interested in type, and I was interested in design and layout. Because that pertains equally to the comic book. But I didn't really want to be just a book illustrator. I wanted to do comics. So I basically spent my third year adapting several short stories that somebody had written for me, and then Ian Banks's The Wasp Factory I did as my final project, which is a book from the 80s that is kind of horrific, but it was full of lots of good imagery of boys eating dogs and things like that.
Jeez. All right, you mentioned Spider-Man. Here's a recent commission you did.
Oh, a big Spider-Man fan, but that was because I was around for when they launched the UK Marvel stuff. So
yeah, I've had Richard Starkings on to talk about that period, and that's really amazing. But also, not only to reprint the older stuff, but I love the Planet of the Apes stuff that was coming out from Marvel UK.
That
and
stuff was Looney Tunes because they ran out of Planet of the Apes stuff from Marvel, and then repurposed Killraven as Ape Slayer. So when I came to, because I loved Killraven.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there I was reading the American Killraven books going, I've read this before. Where are the apes?
I so hear you, man. I think that is so great and inventive, much in the same way that, and I don't remember the publisher, and this is before your time, but when Captain Marvel and the original Marvel family was licensed for the UK, and Fawcett stopped making it, and that gave birth to Miracle Man.
Yeah, you see, I didn't see Miracle Man ever until Warrior came out, which was
Marvel Man in obviously the UK.
Yeah. But that was one. Gary Leach's artwork is just superb in that first issue. And Alan Moore was writing comics like we'd never seen.
Yeah.
That probably issue 1 of Warrior is one of the most important comics to my origin, really. Everything in it is there's bits of that in my DNA.
I totally get that, and I so agree with you. I mean, when it was coming out here in Eclipse, minds were blown, and of course, we already loved Alan's work on Swamp Thing here.
Yeah.
As well. Have you had encounters with Alan?
Only when I was a wee kid, and I'd go to signings. And I'm talking to a friend over breakfast about this only this morning, about how we'd both gone to similar signings and had the same dilemma that Alan Moore would be at we'd had these big signings during school breaks at Forbidden Planet. So you'd have all of the staff of 2000 AD would turn up. So you'd have Dave, you'd have Brian Bolland, you'd have Kevin O'Neill, you'd have Wagner and Alan Grant, and there'd always be Alan Moore sitting there looking grumpy. And we all loved his stuff, but the trouble was he wouldn't sign anything that he didn't work on. And as a kid, you just want to get your book signed, It's like, I'm at an event, and the fact you haven't written this doesn't matter. I'm at an event.
Yeah. It's like it's like having the program for the event, and you want everyone to sign it. I totally get it. Absolutely, man.
So I can remember having, because the signings used to be upstairs in the Forbidden Planet, which was in Denmark Street, which is Timpan Alley in London, and having to run down, get that week's 2000 AD, run up again and go, now you can sign something.
Wow, sure. Jesus, that's so funny. God, I'm so glad you mentioned Kevin O'Neill. I mean, we were all heartbroken to hear
It's
this
such
bad
a
news
loss.
this week. Yeah, yeah. And I blew it, Mark. I had a great conversation with him when I think Volume 3 of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen came out. Could not have been nicer. I'm talking martial law with him because that was my first exposure to him and Pat Mills, frankly. And he was just great. And literally at the end, I was re-listening to it before I reposted it. And it's like, oh man, let's make sure we catch each other again. Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad the guys that do the 2000 AD podcast had a great 2-hour conversation with him in the last couple of years. And it's like, oh, that's, again, I have no ego when it comes to other great podcasts. And those guys do a tremendous job. You can find it on YouTube, everybody.
You would have loved talking to him because he's such a huge science fiction film fan. And special effects were his thing. And he used to do a strip in 2000 AD called Dash Decent, which is obviously Flash Gordon. But it was Flash Gordon if you could see the strings on everything. So it was kind of pointing out where all the special effects were, and you'd have people sweeping up behind them when
that's fantastic
stuff.
Yeah. Oh my God. Lyle tells us that Bruce Cornwell worked for Hampson Studios in the UK, and he passed in 2012.
Right.
And Josh echoes our feelings that Kevin was such an amazing artist. Absolutely.
Well, he really was. I mean, he also was the guy that gave us credits on British comics as well, because he was the art director on 2000 AD. And the reason we had those little credit cards on everything was that he slipped them in without telling people.
Wow.
That, no one knew who anybody was.
Amazing to hear. And honestly, I don't even know if you're doing any 2000 AD stuff currently, what your feelings are, but was it tough back then? Because what were the other comic publishers that were contemporary with 20 AD? In the 80s or whatever.
Well, you got 2000 AD was one of many comics at IPC Publishing. So, they'd have 100 comic titles maybe out a month. And then you had DC Thompson up in Scotland that did the Beano and the Dandy and Warlord and Beezer, which is more humor titles, but they also do the Commando comics as well, which people know, the Little Digest war comics.
Yeah. I've got some of those. Yeah.
But when I was growing up in the 70s, there was a lot of, like in America, a lot of Spanish and Filipino artists being used. So I don't know if that was because there was a drought of artists that had gone, well, I'm going to go and do something grown up now, and go and do proper illustration, which happened in America as well at points, where people would just go, do you know what, we have better money in advertising. There's only so long that you can stay working on stuff you love that doesn't love you back.
Well, yeah, and as you say, the money was better in advertising. I just spoke to Drew Friedman, and God, I remembered hearing the same thing from Tony Millionaire a couple of years ago, that now the illustration jobs for magazines have certainly dried up, as in America the magazine rack has gotten smaller. It seems to me, in talking to people from the UK, though, that magazines are still doing pretty well. What is your experience?
That's the thing. I mean, it does worry me that my local WH Smith's, which is like Walden News, sorry, is it Walgreens? Walgreens, isn't it? No,
the drugstore. Yeah.
What? No, Hudson News. That's what I'm trying to
sure, Hudson News. I know, certainly.
Yeah. So, like Hudson, WH Smith is like Hudson News. It's the news agents and bookseller that you find in most big towns. But my local one doesn't even sell newspapers anymore. And I think that was COVID. People.
Wow.
You don't need a newspaper when you can watch rolling news all day.
Oh yeah. Well, and read it digitally as well. It's funny you say Hudson News, because again, being a guy in his 50s, I could tell you in the in the 90s and even in the early 2000s, newsstands were very much still a big part of Chicago. I can literally only think of one in downtown Chicago by one of the big skyscrapers, the John Hancock building where I worked
Right.
for a couple of years in radio. Down
Wow.
the street from there was a Hudson News newsstand. And mostly it seemed to me that they were tourists, and not only American tourists, but foreign tourists as well. And they would gravitate to Hudson News. But that is such a great loss, man. I know Hudson newsstands, but also the record store Tower was a great franchise nationally here. And I would go to Tower, and their magazine and newspaper section was so exciting. And it really was the internet of the day, because the London Times was right there with all the other papers and magazines internationally. It was amazing.
You know, I'd go and visit family, and it was the place I could still get Melody Maker sounds and NME while I was, you know, so I didn't miss out on music stuff.
I hear you, man.
Yeah,
No,
so, yeah, it's a huge loss. I mean, I don't know. I think people still like physical things. I can see newspapers going away to a certain extent, but I think periodical magazines will stay.
I certainly hope so. And friends of mine that used to make a Ring magazine, and actually Ring just announced that they were dropping their physical copies. But these guys created a quarterly magazine called Ringside Seat, and it's so beautiful, and it's great digitally and as a physical magazine. And they even do annuals of their best articles and stuff. So, that seems to me that I mean, we had the 80-page giants and the 100-page spectaculars in American comics, but it seemed when American comics finally got into annuals, they were taking a page from British and European comics.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's the way. Well, especially at Christmas, all of the comic books would do their annual, and it was a big, I suppose, European-sized comic, hardbacked, and you'd have like a Spider-Man story and a Hulk story in the Marvel one, and maybe a Fantastic Four story. I mean, that was where I first saw the origin of the Fantastic Four, the origin of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the origin of Spider-Man was in an annual.
That's great, man. And also, first of all, Josh Flanders has a couple of great comments. Again, he's in Chicago, and he said it's hard to find magazines these days. He has to go to Evanston, which is where Northwestern University is. And yes, they have an amazing, thankfully, newsstand. I used to live in an apartment right down the street from it in Evanston. And yeah, that was a great one. And Don agrees with us too. We all love the tangible feeling of possessing a story. Well, yeah, physical media in general, because you can lump in DVDs and stuff.
I've completely left the digital platform for comics now that Comixology has gone over to Amazon. For whatever reason, I couldn't log back in, couldn't get my collection back, and it was like, do you know what? I'm not going to miss this. This is it's just hassle, and my comic shop will send me my comics, and I get a discount there, and they like me. Amazon obviously don't like me enough to keep me as a customer.
No, man, we're all living in the village, to give you the prisoner analogy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're just another number. Absolutely, man. No, there's no love between Amazon and the individual. I hear you, man.
I can remember when Amazon first started, and they'd send you Christmas presents if you were a good customer.
I didn't know that. That's wild. Wow.
Yeah, I've got like Amazon Jenga and things like that I was sent because I was a voracious reader.
Times have changed, man. What are you going to do?
Oh, it's like when you used to work for a comic book company, they'd send you Christmas presents. That hasn't happened for a good long time.
Wow. Now, again, I want to show some images of your work recently. Well, you've got. I'm assuming this is a book in progress that you're doing with Chris Sabella.
Yes, that's pages from a book I'm doing for Humanoids called Provision. Well, I'm going to say provisionally because these things always change. Called Eden at the moment, which is a pretty hard sci-fi story.
There's another great image right here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Will it be color or will it be black and
Oh
white?
yeah, it's been coloured by Lee Lowridge, so we've got
Oh, that's great.
somebody shit hot on it, you know.
Well, that's an amazing team, the three of you. That's wonderful.
It's great because because it's for humanoids. It's ostensibly a European project, so one, it's going to come out big, which always makes me happy, and two, it's has all of the sensibilities of a French Belgian or Franco Belgian comic book. So it's going to have that lush colouring. It's we're expected to spend the time on the pages. Do you know what I mean? It's
That's amazing. Will it be a one shot or is the plan to do
I
two or three?
it's 5 chapters, and I'm presuming it's coming. They were talking about it originally coming out as a monthly and as
Wow.
a graphic novel. So, but I don't know. Humanoids change a lot of their plans as they go. I mean, it depends what is selling best for them, and I would presume that's probably physical books rather than floppies at the moment.
Certainly. Is Mark Waid still involved
Yeah,
with you?
yes, he is. Yeah, he's still editor in chief, and
That's
you've got
great.
John Cassaday there as art director as well. So
Wow, I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's people who know what they're doing.
Clearly, yes. My God, yes. That is so great to hear, Mark, because honestly, um, I really came late to Euro comics in general, French, Belgium, Spanish, everything, even, and not only Euro comics, but even South American comics. And as I got older, I really grew to appreciate them more. I still love superheroes; they're fun.
Yeah,
But it is so nice that I was exposed to the world of these amazing artists and writers, the classics as well as the current guys and women. And it really has opened up this world to me. And I look forward to just a good book and a good genre story, whatever it
I
is.
see the European format of the 48 to 70 page book being more what we're going to see from publishers. I think that the idea that you maybe get 2 of those a year is more likely than the floppy keeping going. I mean, as much as you and I like going every week to get our comics, but the kids that are buying manga don't understand that. They're going in, they're buying them when and as they come out.
Yeah, when they're collected. No, I
Yeah,
hear you, man. 100%.
and let's face it, that's the audience that they need to go for, because those are the kids that are reading comics.
I just had my friend Dave Scheid on, who does middle school graphic novels and stuff. And yeah, we were both talking about, of course, R.L. Stine with Goosebumps, but Renee Telgemeier, and that, like, those numbers dwarf are so much bigger than the American, the traditional superhero comics. And that's great. I'm glad there's room for all that. And obviously this is the way to get kids to read comics and stuff. Have you done any, if not middle school, all ages stuff?
No, never done any stuff for that. I've been kind of teen plus on almost everything. When you start off working with Chaikin,
Ah!
you're not going to get back down to doing cuddly kids books.
What did you do with Howard either
That
lately
was
or?
American Century. I did with him
Oh, of
over
course.
at Vertigo for 2-3 years.
Oh, Mark, truly one of my favorite books, and I've talked to Howard about that. How much I loved it. I am fascinated by that post World War II Cold War period and especially a lot of the dirty tricks and dirty dealings.
Oh,
That
I learned so much from doing that book.
oh yeah,
It was you'd get the cliff notes from Howard, and they'd be like, right, I need to go and read on that.
so true, man. Absolutely. God, if I had your skill, that is exactly the kind of genre stuff I would be drawing. Would be that period, because honestly, just incredible, just the stuff that the CIA was doing in South America, for example.
Absolutely.
It just,
I had no idea about US fruit and all of that kind of stuff.
right, United Fruit, indeed.
Yeah, and until we did a story in Guatemala and all that kind of stuff, and there was tons of, when we did the Hollywood arc, tons of stuff I didn't know. And then he taught me all about NASCAR and bootlegging. So it was
Sure. That
it was an education.
Well, and I would say conversely, Garth Ennis taught me about the European and certainly the British perspective on Worlds War One and Two.
Right.
And in fact, for Veterans Day, I republished my first conversation with Garth that had nothing to do with the boys or his past superhero work. And a great American publisher called Dead Reckoning has been republishing a lot of his tankies and stories like that. And of course, I loved the war stories collections that he did in the early 2000s. And yeah, man, I mean, the guy is much like Chaikin, such a student of history.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that Garth is really fascinated by this period, and he documents it quite well.
Yeah, and nobody's done better Nick Fury stories than he has.
Agreed.
Equally, his Punisher at War stuff was really good.
Again, he gets in the heads of these soldiers and really tells you a very human story, along with the bombing and the tragedy that surrounds it. Lyle wants to make sure that Eden will be available here in the
yeah, absolutely. It's a dual publication.
So yeah, guys, once again, here's a couple images from Eden to look forward to without spoiling anything. And of course,
I could share some of the spaceship shots because they're quite spectacular.
That's great, man. You kill it up every time. Now, was this? And forgive me because I know my Star Trek better than my Star Wars. Is this is this the one from Rogue One?
That's right. Yeah, that was just a sketch I did at where was that one? That was the show in just outside Seattle, SummerCon it was called.
Well, that's great, man. Oh, I'm glad you were over here. Dude, you got to come. I mean, and I know it's been forever. And actually, I can't even remember. Maybe I mostly saw you in New York. Have you ever been to Chicago?
Yeah. I've done. We've spoken twice at C2E2.
Okay, and you'll forgive me for not. Yeah. I mean, I know we've been face to face, but yeah, sometimes the city will escape me. So that's great. Well,
I love C2E2. It's just a question of getting invited to that show. It's like New York. You're never going to get an invite and get comped for that one. So you have to kind of go, right. It's it's on me and it's worthwhile doing.
I hear you, man.
Because just before COVID hit, I got representation with Comic Sketch Art, so they do my show bookings now, which is great because it means that it's not costing me so much, and also having somebody there to do the taking of the money and all of that kind of stuff, and bring your books and everything with them just takes such a big hassle out of doing shows.
I know traveling with buddies like Art and Franco and Tim Seeley and Mike Norton and stuff. No, I see the giant suitcase that's just filled with trades and original art and things like that. And so Comic Sketch Art, are there pages available from you, or are you working purely digital?
I'm working purely digital, but you can commission me through them there. And I haven't got them put up on the website yet, but my new art book that I had done just before. Have I got a copy of that around?
Oh, good. Yeah. We can zoom in and look at it.
Yeah, so this is a collection of
wow.
And that was a print I did for that show in Washington State. But this is it's 40 odd pages of big.
Look at that
stuff.
Oh my God! See, this is great, Mark. Well done.
Good. But this is going, like I say, this is going to be on the website. Comic Sketch Art available to get in the US.
Marvelous. Oh God, look at that. Oh man. So good. Well, dude, and then please, yeah, show more. But another excuse for us to talk sooner than later on Word Balloon. So yeah, and again, yeah, feel free if you got more to show. But
my book after Eden is a book called You Are Here. I don't know how in focus. Is that
okay,
right, John?
Yeah,
that's a book I'm doing with Nate Cosby, and again we've got a French publisher lined up, but we're not sure if we're going to kickstart or how we're going to publish that one yet. But
is that a slice of life kind of history book? I mean, what
no, it's a spy book.
Oh, wonderful!
It's a spy book with dating.
With dating,
Yeah, dating and dogs.
Dating and dogs.
Yeah,
fantastic.
So it's a spy with a terrible, terrible love life, and who happens to be the only person who can use this one piece of technology that the CIA have developed. And there's a bit of quantum leapy type stuff in it, but it's not time travel. But it's a fun adventure book.
Sounds great, man.
But like I said, lots of bad dates in it.
See, and again, I always bug you because we're around the same age, and I'm always fascinated by your media inspirations and what I was watching. And certainly, I can't help but gush about Jerry Anderson shows and The Prisoner and The Avengers, British Avengers, Steve and Mrs. Peel. And of course, before that, Kathy, darn it, you'll fill in the blank for me. Honor Blackman.
Yeah. And that was God, because Kathy Gale was after that, and it was
right. Or no, Kathy Gale was Honor Blackman. Tara King was after.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did I get that the wrong way around?
And honestly, Mark, I love watching pre-video British television and like early Avengers with Honor Blackman, Kathy Gale, and even the other character. And there's very few existing kinescopes or film of the original male.
So much of that was actually shot live.
Exactly.
So it was like them putting on a play.
And it's fascinating. I mean, you might know that because you were fast asleep or perhaps just waking up when we were doing it. But Gabe Hardman and I and Ian Brill were doing a whole thing about kinescope where we were looking at early American television from the 40s and 50s pre-videotape. And when on syndication, when they run those old Avengers that were shot live, I love it. It's great because, man, that's a lot of work. And they still managed to convey that these were international, secret agents traveling in all these different locations and stuff. And I don't know how big the soundstage was, but it was like, all right.
It would have been the size of a box room. These things, like Doctor Who, everything was either done in a quarry or in a box room.
Yes, the quarry's Doctor Who, certainly. I am excited for the what's coming next year for Doctor Who for the 60th anniversary.
I've still not caught up on the last episode. I'm keeping it for when I have a chance.
I was doing that with the middle episodes of Sherlock, the Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman show, because they seem to be standalones. And I knew that we would have to wait a year and a half sometimes between seasons. So I would kind of save those and be like, all right, when I'm really itching for a new Sherlock and I know I'm still 6 months away, I would bank these to kind of watch on my own. So, yeah.
It's not like the Star Wars stuff or the Marvel stuff where someone's, or even worse, Rings of Power, somebody is going to spoil it for you, within 10 seconds on Twitter, and you're trying to block everything before but then somebody gets an advanced copy and then they've ruined it, and but at least with Doctor Who, people tend to not do spoilers too much, so I can come to that fairly sort of sanguine and just watch it for what it is.
I'm a big fan too, and it's not just Doctor Who. They certainly have expanded their library to other licenses, but the Big Finish audios.
I love them.
Oh my god, dude! Those Prisoner episodes they did a couple years ago.
They're really, really good. They did some great Robin of Sherwood ones.
The Avengers. They've also done the Avengers.
Now there was a great TV show in the mid-70s called Survivors, and it was kind of middle-class people surviving when the world goes to shit with COVID, basically. And half the country's dead. There's no power anymore, and it literally is people surviving and making communities. And I just loved that show. And then I discovered that Big Finish had done getting all the old actors back, because half of them got sacked after the first series.
Wow.
So people just disappeared. So you actually have some continuity back with the original writers as well, which is great. And it's people like Terrence Dicks writing that, who did Doctor Who. But that's great stuff.
Yeah, and again, no, Terrence Dicks, an amazing sci-fi writer that did so much British television. Yeah, man, I'm telling you, a real education watching that. Space 1999, UFO.
Yeah.
I mean, just so many great shows. And also, so how many episodes did they make of Survivor, or how many seasons?
Well, it was 1, 2, 3. I think 4 seasons, and it does as a story complete. But it was one of those things where that, because they would have these things where people would just disappear and they go, oh, they've gone off somewhere to go and see another community. And that what they filled in with the Big Finish stuff is all that stuff.
Very cool. HR, I'm trying to decipher his comment here. TGOHO, folks. I don't know. Well, I'm old. Yeah. Sorry, man. You lose me after LOL and TTFN and things like that.
I know that one. I know that one.
If I recall correctly.
Yes.
So yeah. But HR, I'm glad you're watching, and I hope you're enjoying it. And so no, I mean, like I said, Mark and I could just roll through old TV and movies and stuff.
John, I discovered this week,
please,
that one of my favorite radio and TV comedy shows, Hancock's Half Hour, continued with the original writers in Denmark as another series, and that it went on until the 2000s. And this is something that was a 1950s thing that finished early 60s in the UK. And I watched a couple of them with subtitles, and it's just as good. And absolutely fantastic stuff.
So they're old episodes that they're replaying, or?
Oh, well, I just found them on YouTube. So that the UK one was like 6 radio series, and then I think there was a series of 3 series on BBC. Then it moved on to ITV, which is the non-paid for network. Well, the one,
right?
It's our commercial network.
Yes, that's where the Muppets and The Prisoner, among other shows, and Space 1999. I think
Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet,
Thunderbirds, absolutely. Oh, Captain Scarlet, sure.
So there was that stuff, and there was a movie, and like I say, the people who wrote it were guys called Galton and Simpson, and they used all of those scripts in Denmark, and then the show was so popular that they had to keep on writing up into the early 2000s, where they introduced new characters, and his mother comes to live with him, and this is just like a grumpy actor is basically he's a grumpy out of work actor, and do you know the British comedian actor Sid James?
I do.
In the Carry On films.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. I know Sid James.
Him and Kenneth Williams were
yes
supporting actors in the Hancock stuff. So if you can imagine how good Hancock must be if those two are support.
That's great. I just literally, Mark, caught, this is why I love YouTube. We will get a lot of documentaries that run on the regular BBC or ITV. They'll pop them up on YouTube. And I literally saw this great 2-hour Kenneth Williams retrospective. And what an amazing actor. What a great storyteller.
Absolutely.
And really, as thank God, society normalizes and becomes more accepting, a gentleman like Mr. Williams, who was a gay gentleman, can even be more appreciated, and hopefully younger generations will find him to be the comedy icon he was even before people knew that he was a gay gentleman. Absolutely. I mean, he's just a brilliant talent.
we were so lucky that he kept a diary, because
Yes.
he got so much of that stuff, and you really hear his character in it as well. I mean, I don't think he had a particularly happy life, but he was wonderful.
Again, I had no idea the levels of illegality that the gay lifestyle had to
Oh.
suffer through in the UK compared to even here. I mean, certainly it was bad here too, but it does seem like it was much worse in the UK.
Oh, it was kind of well, it was illegal.
Yeah.
The sex act itself was illegal, and the assumption was that if you were caught with another man, possibly about to do something, you would be arrested and you could face prison for that. The amount of men that went to prison just for being who they are.
Yeah. Well, again, thankfully things have changed, and
Well, and
you get better.
thankfully, with it being legal now and,
Oh my
and
God.
has been for years, there's less unsafe behaviour going on, because I mean, it always made me, because it was still not, everything was frowned upon when I was a kid, and you'd hear about people going out queer bashing all the time. You just don't hear that as much now. I'm sure it still happens, but you don't. It's just not something that people will talk about in polite company.
And thankfully, people stand up to that kind of behavior,
Yeah,
along with the gay community, and are like, no, not cool.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and really, like, God, we had the incident that I love, that the Stonewall incident, where a bar in New York, and this was the
Yeah.
inspiration for the gay pride parades, for people who don't know. And in fact, I really schooled my older cousin, and I'm like, yeah, there was just a gay bar in New York, and the vice cops busted in, and nobody was doing it. Everyone's just drinking and hanging out. And it's like, you're all under arrest. And it's like, for what? And it's like, well, your lifestyle. And they went to court, and this is like 1969 in New York. And the New York judge is like, so what were they doing? Well, Your Honor, their lifestyle. And it's like, case dismissed. And it's like, yay. That's why they hold the gay pride parades in June and everything, to celebrate that moment. And it's like, again, things need to continue to get better, but we've come a long way, and thankfully that was one of the first big steps.
Goodness me, they have. I mean, in the same way that certainly up until before Brexit, being openly racist in the UK was not seen as cool anymore.
No.
When growing up in the 70s, nobody thought anything of just being, what was known as just casual racism.
Yeah. No, I agree, man.
I was always that kid that couldn't see any different. So it was kind of, it's like, what are you, talking about?
Well, truly, man. I mean, again, you and I grew up in that same generation, where I do think our elders were teaching us, hey, everybody's cool, and appreciate the diversity and everything. So I want to mention, Lionel mentioned some other great British comedians, John Inman, of course.
Yeah.
Frank Thornton, Nicholas Smith, Trevor Bannister, which is cool. And Josh thanks us for the heads up on Big Finish. And he's a big Prisoner fan. You will not be disappointed, Josh. These are incredible. Really.
And there's the adaptation of the DC graphic novel as well, isn't there?
Oh my God. Yes, with Dean Motter.
Yeah.
The Mr. X creator and everything. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. What a great continuation. And in fact, I even heard an amateur audio drama adapting Dean's story.
No, there's
Marc
a proper,
as well wrote that.
There is a proper one with expensive effects and everything.
Wow.
It's very good. I mean,
isn't it interesting though, Mark, that I appreciated the Jim Caviezel attempt with Ian McKellen to reboot The Prisoner about 15 years ago, but I don't know, man. It's hard. As our society becomes more like The Village, I mean, good Lord, you guys suffer even more. You guys had, the kind of surveillance cameras and stuff. In fact, that's what David Lloyd and Alan Moore were fighting against with V for Vendetta.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got them everywhere.
But yeah, I mean, and that's why, like, it's like, the prisoner. It's like, yeah, what's the point of this? It's like we're all in the village anyway.
Yeah, I felt similarly about Westworld. It was like it looks very pretty, but it was all done in the movie.
Yes,
You're not really giving me much more. But the prisoner's really difficult. I think you have to set it in the 60s to make it work.
I agree.
You know,
Matt Wagner and I have had that conversation, and Matt always says, even applying it to Zorro and even Batman, and he's like, this stuff really does work best if you keep it in the era in which it was inspired. And certainly Zorro, you put him on a motorcycle, and it's almost ridiculous.
Yeah, the Fantastic Four movie coming up, I'm sure it's going to be great, but that should be a 60s movie.
I so agree. And
it should just be a forgotten bit of history.
Well, and yes, or at the very least, have them have the first act of the movie take place in the Cold War. Maybe they disappear in the negative zone and then suddenly are brought out in the same Captain America sort of way of now they're in modern day.
Like they did with Ant-Man as well. You have all the stuff that Douglas is supposed to have done. So there's no reason why you can't do that, and I think that would be the braver and more honest way of making that movie. But that's just me.
No, but I'm with you, and also to flesh out that Peggy Carter period of post World War II, and you could get Hank Pym in there and all the other seeds of the Marvel universe before the modern era. And it's like, well, you're already there and you've already laid out the groundwork for that. And no, I agree with you. I think Fantastic Four would be a great team to run around because it was a Cold War story.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, man. Josh says that that Dean Motter prisoner got him into that, and he had to find the VHS tapes of the show, My Comic Shop. I remember, Mark, bootlegs that I believe came from the UK, although maybe they wouldn't have looked right on our TVs because of the different screen.
Can you play those VHSs? You can play them. You just have to play about with your
reception.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but they were definitely bootlegs of Prisoner episodes, and they were rented out of a record store in fact, Northwestern area.
I remember the first San Diego I did. There was a table at the back, just full of British TV on VHS.
Sure. Yeah.
And things like Marine Boy and old, 60s anime that only I remember. And
I hear you. I kind of laugh at all the attempts to adapt British drama and humor to American versions. God, there's a couple horrible Faulty Towers knockoffs that they tried in the 80s.
Oh, I can't imagine how that would ever work.
Well, and it was B. Arthur in the basically. Yeah, and it's like, perfect John Cleese comparison. Not really.
Well, the In-Betweeners was terrible. The version that they did. And how it managed to miss the point.
And the American coupling, and it's like, we already got that. It's called Friends. I don't know
how
to
exactly.
You. And
that was our answer to Friends.
Yes, and a brilliant show.
Yeah, it was definitely a response to Friends. It's like you're exporting and bringing back something that we've already had.
It's a copy of a copy, exactly. It's like nice try, but no, we already got it, man. It's doing fine. You'll appreciate this being a guy in the comic industry. My only encounter with Stephen Moffat was at San Diego, and I don't know why, Mark. Maybe he doesn't look like David Hine, the British writer, to everybody else, but I really thought it was David. And I'm like, David, good to see you. And he's like, pardon me? And I'm like, David Hine, right? He goes, no, Steve Moffat. I'm like, oh my God, Stephen. And I had my iPhone, so I'm like, could I even get you for a second? He's like, I'm running. And I said, well, please let me quickly tell you, beyond Doctor Who, how much I love coupling. And he's like, oh, thanks, man. That's really nice. And he walked away. I'm like,
coupling was great.
Great show. Yeah, man. Well, again,
the Welsh guy on that was just so funny. His name completely escapes me, but there was a brilliant episode where they were talking about how women only own one pair of stockings between them.
Who's the British comedian? And maybe he's Welsh. You know, I'm a geographical and accent knucklehead, but I do know I couldn't identify them, but I am aware of the subtle differences of various British dialects and everything. But Aidan, who did Father Ted and was the younger priest, and also recently he was on Death in Paradise.
Oh yeah, yeah. The guy he did a series as a superhero as well.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
Yes, My Hero.
Yeah.
And he was Thermal Man, I believe, or Thermo Man.
Thermo
Yes.
Man. Yeah.
And it was great because this guy, and his first name is Adrian. Everybody, you can, you know, I'm sure IMDb.
Aidan.
Aidan. Yeah.
It will come to me as soon as we stop talking.
I have no doubt. It's alliterative as well. It's another A. But my God, brilliant comedian.
Is it O'Donnell? Aidan O'Donnell? Something like that.
Oh, maybe that's it. I'll confess.
Or O'Dowd. Or was that Boy George?
But My Hero is a great, silly superhero parody.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, I caught that. You know what's interesting? I know you guys aren't affected, but we're all curious with Doctor Who now getting Disney funding, and that the new episodes are going to be on Disney Plus here streaming instead of BBC America.
Right.
What happens to that Eccleston to Jodie Whittaker period of reruns? Like, is that also part of the deal? And will that migrate to Disney? Currently, they're on HBO Max.
Wow.
But again, that's a licensing thing. But yeah, we're all kind of like, all right, so now what's going to happen? We don't know.
Yeah, well, things like that are weird, aren't they? Because there are things in the UK that are on Amazon, that are on Netflix, that confuse the heck out of me. So it's how the funding works internationally is very weird. Have you watched Slow Horses, John?
Mark, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I love that show. It's on Apple TV here. Yeah. Feel free to describe it to everyone.
The best cop drama possibly in 30 years. You know, and the best thing Gary Oldman's ever done.
It's like The Office meets your favorite procedural.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And yeah, it's these misfits that are all in this one division of British intelligence to really do all the crap work. Like literally, go ahead.
And they're obviously the best people at the job, but they don't fit in actually at MI6. So that they're sent to, I'm trying to think of the name of the house.
Oh yeah, I don't remember it either. But
anyway, they're sent to the worst, most horrible North London office block where nothing works properly, and their boss spends his whole time telling them how crap they are, and basically wafting curry at them all the way through.
Yeah. And holes in his socks, and he's got his feet with no shoes on his desk. Gary Oldman is the spy master, and oh my God, it is so great. And Jonathan Pryce is amazing in the show too. I'm so glad you're watching that, Mark. I absolutely love it.
I got turned on to the books afterwards, and they are so good. I mean, if we just get the next 3, we're going to get some of the best TV we've seen like that.
That's amazing. Have they made a second series?
They're making it now.
That's what I thought. Okay. And by the way, Mick Jagger does the theme song, and it's a great Mick Jagger song.
Yeah,
it's like, oh my God. It's just, top to bottom, it's an amazing show.
It was one of those ones that I had to tell Howard about before he missed it, because it was so good.
How about are you getting For All Mankind, the astronaut show?
Yes, love it. It's fantastic and really clever.
Absolutely,
that's TV as well.
Well, and again, it's Ronald Moore, who did such a great job with the reboot of Galactica and was a longtime great Star Trek writer as well. So, oh man, and it really, so many of my hardcore Star Trek friends, we all say, like, this is the real prequel. Like, For All Mankind could have led to the Federation the way they're laying it out and everything as far as history. And
I love the rewriting of history because it's just close enough, as an alternative history without it being it's ridiculous.
I so agree, man. I absolutely agree. Well, Mark, honestly, man, this is great. What is the best way for people to commission you for
comicsketchart.com, and if you go to my Twitter account, which is monkey__Mark, and that's Mark with a C rather than a K, all the details are in my pinned tweet about how to commission me. So and although my list isn't going to be open again until the new year, because I've got stuff I owe, and
Sure.
it would be unfair to those people who have been very patient with me.
I understand, man. Well, again, follow Mark at monkey _ Mark at Twitter. Facebook page at all, Mark, or no?
Yep. There's also marklamming.com, which I always forget. I don't update it very often, but all my social media details are on there.
Very good.
Who knows how long Twitter's going to be there for? But I'm not going. I'm not going anywhere at the moment. I don't have plans.
Dude, I'm with you. And then we get the news at the end of the week where, well, Twitter might go bankrupt. And it's like, all right, well, we found a new place to hang after MySpace collapsed.
Yeah,
I am confident we'll find another place. Certainly, you and I will remain in touch regardless.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Honestly, Mark, it's always good to see you. I'm sorry that it's this way as opposed to face to face.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, John.
Well, I feel the same way, man. And everyone's being very sweet and saying how much they really enjoyed the panel as well. So yeah, and I thank everybody.
Well, thank you. I'm just talking about stuff I like. I managed to wean you off my work and onto things that I like.
Yeah, but that's the nature of Word Balloon. I hope people who are coming to this for Bill's stuff will find more at wordballoon.com and my YouTube channel, Word Balloon, and also my audio, which is available anywhere where you can find podcasts, because this is what we do. We talk about the work, and then we talk about the stuff that inspires us and the stuff we love. And it's just a lovely conversation. So, this is why I knew it'd be fun, man. And I was so glad you were available to do this. So
it's always a pleasure, John. It really is.
Thank you, man. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Great panels all day here at Comic Art Fans Convention. And I'll be back at, I got to do the math. It's 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. And I'll be talking to Franco Aureliani of Art and Franco, Tiny Titans fame. Franco just dropped a fantastic anthology of dead man stories that are great for all ages. And 15 different artists doing these incredible stories. And Boston Brand is essentially our Rod Serling, kind of the wraparound host for all these great stories. So check out that conversation and more coming up later this afternoon. Hang on, Mark. We'll say goodbye to each other. But thanks for watching, everybody.
Most of the comic creators that were working piecemeal. They were working without any sort of retirement plan.
They interceded. It enabled me to get a home.
They appeared on the horizon to help me.
I think it's just great that they're even doing something like this.
Hi, I'm Stan Lee, and I support the Hero Initiative because everyone deserves a golden age.